What's good, my lovely peoples? It's your main man Solace here, the humble servant of the life. Today I want to do this video called Who Owns America? Part 3. Who owns the White House? Now, I have two other videos, Who Owns America, the Bronx, and Who Owns America, New York City birth certificate. You should go back and watch those. They're on my channel somewhere. Now, who owns the White House? Before I get into that, I want to break down exactly what the White House is. Because a lot of people don't learn from seeing, so things become clouded. Now, we must understand, the White House is nothing more than a plantation. Just look at the house. It looks no different than any other plantation house. It is just way bigger. So it is like the plantation of all plantations. But you must grasp how this works. See, you have to understand, back in the days, a slave would have called the plantation house master's house, the main house, or it probably would have been called the White House, being as though nothing but white people could have been in there, or very light-skinned slaves. So you have to understand, around the time the White House was built, you had plantations and slave owners. So you must truly grasp how deep this is when I tell you, the White House is nothing more than a plantation. And that is Master's house. Now let me give you some history. Before the White House was built, it was owned by David Burns and his associates. About 17 other men. Now, George Washington bought the land from them. 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, all those acres around that land, George Washington bought that and began construction of the White House. So now I know a lot of y'all will think, well, then George Washington owned the White House. No. George Washington was a representative of King Edward VII. He was the King of England. And George Washington is a general. He represents England. So you have to grasp this. Now, when it was purchased and built, you have to grasp, before this point, you had a bunch of different plantations and a bunch of different plantation owners. So there was no one person in control over the country. Different people owned different parts of this place and had their plantation and their slaves. Now you have to understand, a plantation is nothing more than at-home business, work-from-home business. This is before stores. So you worked from your home and your workers lived with you. So there was no order. Then around 1783, England took over Dutch. And this is when New York became New York from New Amsterdam, and things kind of changed. Slowly after this, slavery was abolished. So you have to grasp. The war between the British and Dutch that was going on here, it didn't end because somebody won. England just took over and everything kind of just merged. So it's a deep thing. But before the White House, you had a bunch of plantations. And when the White House was built, you still had plantations and plantation owners. So you have to grasp what the White House is. Now, when slavery was abolished, this is around the time the White House was being finished. So grasp. It was basically the New World Order. Here lies the plantation of all plantations. Because the plantation represents the master who owns the land. So now England owns this whole country. Grasp. So when George Washington had the White House built, it was in representation of that. There's no more independent plantations. It is only this one. And this one is in the country that it owns. So the plantation will be on the land that it owned. This plantation is in DC, which is the capital of America. So it is stating this is the plantation of the whole country. And King Edward VII would have been the owner of it at that time, being as though he was the King of England. So this is very important that you grasp this, so that when I tell you who owns the White House now, you can be intact with what I'm saying. Now, when slavery was abolished, it truly wasn't, because slaves owned no land. So if you don't own no land, you can't grow food and eat. There's no stores to go buy food from. So telling a person you're free means nothing. Because if they go out there, then they're on someone else's land. This is trespassing. Now, if you're doing a criminal act and you're caught, you can be a slave. That's the only way you can be an involuntary slave, is if you break the law. And if you're on someone's land you don't own, then you're trespassing, and that's breaking the law. So that leaves a slave no options. Now, slaves was paid about $5 a month, but they can't do nothing with that. So now they have to stay on the plantation. And now the plantation owner takes the $5 a month and gives them food, clothe, and house them on the land. And it is the same thing now. So when the White House came, the White House just replaced the old system of how the plantation business worked. And now you had stores and storefronts, and the country is now owned by one family, which would have been the Royal House of Windsor or whoever owns England. So it's a deep thing you must grasp. Now, who owns America today? Queen Elizabeth. She is the Queen of England. England, as I just broke down to you, owns America. So it is a deep thing. The King and Queen of England owns America in other places. It comes with it. Now you have to understand, to be a King or Queen of England, you have to basically be a family member. It's a descendant thing. So they're all the Royal House of Windsor. You have a bunch of different royal houses for kings and queens of whatever place they're the king and queen of. Now, Queen Elizabeth is a part of the Royal House of Windsor, and she is the Queen of England and other places that are under England's rule. Now, she also owns land personally. Ownership of America and all of these other places, that comes with kingship. But now, as an individual, she owns 1/6 of the earth. Grasp that. 1/6 of the land on earth, Queen Elizabeth owns. She's the only person on this earth that owns whole countries. Meaning, she owns Canada. She owns the UK. She owns New Guinea. She owns a bunch of different countries. Grasp that. She owns whatever's in these countries. Now, I'm not sure if she owns the White House. And when I say own, I mean you have title and deed to prove in court of law. I'm not sure if she owns the White House through being the Queen of England, or if this is one of the countries she personally owns now, until she decides to sell it or whatever she wants. But she owns the White House, and she is the owner of America, or the United States, whatever you want to call it. She is the owner of this whole place. And it's a deep thing y'all must grasp. She's the richest person on the planet. They just can't put her on the Forbes list because her wealth is so much more greater than money. How do you calculate it? No one besides her own countries. So what's the price for a country? Who knows? All they know is she owns a bunch of them. Can't calculate her wealth. This is how wealthy she is. That it's You can't calculate it. So you have to grasp when I tell you, she owns America and the White House. This is truly a deep thing. Because when she dies, whoever's up next, they will own it. And she has title and deed to these places she owns, according to the laws of those countries. Meaning, she owns Canada, according to the law and statute in Canada. Not in England, but in Canada. So it's a deep thing. She owns these places and the people and things in them. And it will be passed down to King Harry, Michael, whatever. Prince Harry, Michael, Charles. I don't keep up with these people's names. But one of them will be the next owner and ruler of you. And this is how deep it is. Like, it's a deep thing y'all have to grasp. You had slavery. You had America. You had the British and Dutch and all types of people coming over here, like I told y'all in prior videos, trying to take over land. Basically business. Then England pretty much took over, and all of that was a wrap. So all the independent ownership of the United States was over with. England owns it in a whole. And they put their White House, which is the plantation house, regular master style house, to show that we own this whole country. Forget the little small plantation house that's on the land representing master. This will be the plantation house of plantation houses to represent that we own this place now. And then names was changed, like New York was New Amsterdam when the Dutch owned it. And Britain owned other parts of the USA. So it was all over the place. Different people in different places and different royal families and their generals owned different places. England put all of that aside. So now everything is under one rule. England, through the White House, grasp the generals and representatives that came from England, that represent England. These would be your presidents of this country now. And they are the representatives of the kings and queens of England. And this is how that went from basically 1862 forward. A representative will reside in the plantation or master's house, running the country as a representative for the king or queen of England. And this was the New World Order. Money, one world rulership. So it's a simple thing you must grasp. Now, after time from King Edward VII, which was George Washington times, his next descendant would be king, so on and so forth, till you get down to Queen Elizabeth, which is the Queen of England. And England still owns America, United States, as I just broke down to you. So she inherits that. Deep thing you must grasp. Now, for the idiots that's going to say, oh, I thought you said you didn't know if she owned it individually or through the descendants or the inheritance. You can own something, buy something, sell something. So she could have bought it independently for herself. But even if she didn't, it doesn't matter. It's hers anyway. Because she inherited it through the queenship. So you have to grasp how deep it truly is. So President Obama is just a representative of Queen Elizabeth in her rulership over America or the United States. So you have to grasp. No more plantation style businesses. You can open up a business, but you are still under the control and rule of the government, which is the Royal House of Windsor. And Queen Elizabeth is her turn as queen, ruler. In America and a bunch of other places fall right up in under that rulership. So you truly have to grasp what's going on here. They just colonized, expanded from England to America, Canada, wherever. But slavery never stopped. It wasn't even changed. It was just put into order. And now you have the White House, which is the plantation house. Deep things y'all must grasp. And Queen Elizabeth owns the White House in America. And you. You have to grasp. This lady is selfish. She owns 6,000 dolphins. She keep count. Meaning, whatever country she owns that has dolphins, she keeps count of them. Like, she literally keeps count of her things. She keeps count of the people in the places. This is why you have census. This is why you have a social security card. Because people must keep up with their shit. And that's what you are. You somebody's shit. Hers. And she must keep count. She must keep inventory of how many dolphins, how many birds, and how many men and women she owns. And I'm not joking. You can go to the library, get you a Wikipedia, look all this up, and knock yourself out. The lady owns dolphins, and she keeps count of them. Literally. Like, grasp the greed. What does she need all of these countries for? That is the true nature and core of the Satan. When you just take from the life and you have no use for it. People starving and they can't take land and live and take care of themselves because she owns it and she's one person